Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks. Let's go to the next slide. We're talking about improving data standardization. What is our motivation? Well, we want to increase the understanding and foster the interoperability of data sharing. What are our first findings? We have started, as Eric mentioned, the project, and we've seen what we unfortunately expected to see. There are still some hurdles in the way, and door-to-door data sharing is not as perfect as it could be, especially in the combined transport sector, and it's not fully clear to every stakeholder what are the needs of combined transport and what are the needs of the customer on the other side. So it's a long chain of different stakeholders involved, and we are surprisingly detecting that not everybody knows what exactly the perfect role they should be playing. And the other insight is sometimes we have too much data to be shared and not everything is necessary. So that's an optimization area where we can not reduce the content, but the quantity. Not every movement is of the equal relevance. So that is an area where we also try to look at, do we need to share everything all the time, or is it more relevant to focus on what is really relevant to all stakeholders in depth as well as in quantities? And then some deficits are there that standardization of processes and data sharing is not where it could be. And I come originally from other modes. So we had global projects in ocean, air, road, and then we added rail. So I will give a very short example on others. And the solution for Bridge is that we want to listen to the CT customers' needs to make sure we are not over delivering or under delivering things that are not needed at all, but we can focus first on the things that are most pressing, and that's as part of the workshop today. We also have some questions to you. What is your view at the moment? And we also want to make sure that the parties work together in an efficient way and try to identify some hurdles that should not be there. Some of them are known, some of them are sometimes unknown. And we want to also do, as usual with research projects, focus on the things that can be done fast, but we also have a longer time frame and good relations to the regulators in order to make sure that if something needs to be changed and we get good database to fund our assumptions on, then we also will certainly make recommendations to change regulation or IT systems. Next slide, please. Here. Thanks. As I said, I also have a background from other transport modes, and there's one initiative which more or less has a very similar scope as well as objective as Bridge has. Obviously, they started much earlier in 1997, and the project Cargo IQ was originally known as Cargo 2000. That was the time when I was participating in the late 90s. And we also had the focus and the comparability is here. It's a non-profit organization with a lot of stakeholders are involved. So it's not only the customers, it's also the LSPs, but also IT providers. And the whole chain obviously needs to know what each other is doing in each supply chain segment. That means not only the data, but also the process quality and what activities need to be done and in which timeframes. And here you can see how they organized it, and we are planning to do something very similar in the minimum viable data system approach. And interesting part is they started much earlier. It's more international than combined transport, obviously, since air freight has from the start being a very international business. And they focused or refocused the initiative in 2022 and focused on digitalization and data quality, and that's perfectly also the focus of Bridge. Next slide, please. So what we mean with minimum viable data set, if we look at the typical combined transport supply chain, then we have on the right, you see the figure there. We have a shipper, we have LSP, we have then the CTOs and the terminal operators, we have the railway undertakings and the infrastructure managers. There is data there, not always perfectly what end customers need to have, but sometimes it's always also data that is not need to be shared. So that's why we use this simple color scheme. That's we have some data that can be shared with RUs and IMs, and nobody else needs to know about it. Then there is some data that is shared between everybody. If you look at the red boxes, so these would be data sets and elements that everybody should be receiving. And then obviously there's also data that's only shared between LSPs and shippers. And so this needs to be reflected. We have different standards across the whole supply chain, and there's some considerable potential to avoid and overcome misunderstandings and reduce the costs. And also or a measure that we started is to identify the sensitive parts that should not be shared in order to reduce the hurdle to share data between the stakeholders. Minimum viable data sets, that was one too early, thanks, is what data needs to be shared between the whole supply chain, but also what needs to be shared between the segments. And we want to focus first on the shareable parts that is easy to be shared more fully and more completely. And the target is obviously try to save costs where possible, definitely increase the value, and also see where we can reduce the effort for all stakeholders and involve more stakeholders, because some of the terminals are not, especially the smaller ones, included in the digital data flow. So this is also the target that we want to get to in order to reduce the total coordination cost and add value for consignees and consigners. So this is some extra work that we want to put in here to align the supply chain for combined transport. And if anybody wants to join here or thinks he has valuable inputs, highly welcome. This is not a very closed system, so we will reach out to especially to LSPs and shipper later in the project as well. And therefore, this then hands over to the next slide, please. What we do today is try to find out where you see the situation as of today, and then we will start in the coming months with this demonstrator to work in detail. We have already started in some work streams with some segments, so we are intensively already working with the RUs together in some workshops, and then we will definitely need to collect also the possibilities or not or impossibilities from the LSPs and shipper side as well. And this is one of the reasons why we want to speak to you. And then we have obviously the three options. We can participate in Alice workshops. We can invite Alice members to Bridge workshops, or we can work in the work groups with Alice once we identify really overlapping themes and motivations.